have Ian Dempsey join me for this week's podcast. We're going to be talking through how he built the Money Man. Less from me. Ian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thanks. So, Ian Dempsey. I built a financial advice business called The Money Man. Off the back of being incredibly frustrated with the big corporates of kind of restricting what I could do, and I got to a point where I'm like, I need to outgrow this and kind of move and do my own thing, and that's where it came from, and just built from there. And it's been a tough old journey to get to this point, but I've loved every second of it, and there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, that's pretty mega, because we were talking before that you're at a point now where it's like you need to start bringing people in to keep that growth, right?
And that's been a real challenge in itself to try and do that, because that's not what I ever wanted to do. And like, I had a real epiphany over Christmas, and I was just sat with me folks. They came down for Christmas, sat on a sofa, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, how many of these have I got left? And it was a real kind of slow down time moment where everything just stood still, and I was like, how many of these have I got left with me folks? And do I want to be sat on a sofa with my grandkids in 20 years' time and think, I wish I'd just given it a little bit more? And the answer to that was no. And it's the first time I've ever felt like that, because my view until that point was like, there's only so much you can do yourself, right? And it's get to that level, maintain it, add a little bit each year, but not go crazy with it. Whereas after that, I'm like, let's step back a bit, let's build all the foundations out and get the right people in. So then there's the opportunity to scale that and build into something much bigger. And it was, I struggled with it big time, because it wasn't what I ever wanted. Yes, like the financials and all the rest of it that come off the back of that would be great, but like, it was I had a real wrestle with myself to figure out whether that's really what I wanted.
It's interesting. And the conclusion?
Oh man, I don't know yet. It's the simple answer, but because it's like, I'm getting those right people in place, and it's still like, a couple of them are still very, very early on. I think it's 100% the right thing, but it's what that end goal is for me. I'm still not 100% clear on. Is it the financial freedom, or is it the building something that I'm really proud of? Is it a bit of both? And that's kind of swings and roundabouts. It goes from one to the other.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that everyone has a goal and a vision of what they want to do. And I think if you say to everybody when they start their business, what did you want to do? And then you ask them 5, 10, 20 years at those different mile points, I bet you get a different answer at every single one.
Yeah.
But I think we first met each other on LinkedIn, didn't we? We came across from LinkedIn. And that's really what I want to dig into, because obviously, you started your own business. You went from, I'm going to say, 0 leads. I know obviously people knew you before, but you've built what I think is quite a magnificent business. I'd love to hear kind of the things you did, what worked, what didn't work. And I guess because I work with accountants, and I work with firms that are kind of like 1 to 3 partners. They've been running maybe 5, 6 years, and kind of that 5, 6 year point, maybe their referrals have started to slow down, and they're thinking, right, I need to go post on LinkedIn, or I need to start writing blogs and stuff. And for whatever reason, they don't maybe know where to start or how to get started. Where did you start?
Oh man, great question. Like for me, it was lockdown was a real eye opener for me, and the starting point for me was, and this is kind of feeding the lead gen stuff, was what kind of business do I want to be able to run, and how do I want to be known for dealing with clients? And it was figuring out what that looked like first, and that took a long time to figure out. But the bare bones of it was there initially, and it was, I don't want to be a traditional FA. I don't want to be the guy in the pinstripe suit, the nice watch and the fancy car. And I did that for a long time and was good at it, but I didn't want to do that anymore. And just started figuring out, well, how can I add value? And it got to a real crossroads of, do I do more qualifications, or do I focus on the behavioral element? And it was the behavioral element. And the behavioral element then led on to, how am I going to find these people? And a lot of it was, it's probably not going to be the traditional networking stuff, although networking's great, and I did that for a while. It's going to be looking at social media and really trying to figure out where I can find the right people. And again, that was a real conflict, because my message was very different to what I'd previously been comfortable with. Okay. Because it's in the big corporates, which is where I was kind of trained and kind of cut my teeth for 16, 17 years. It's very much, you can have a tiny little bit of freedom to do what you want, but the rest of it has to be our brand and on message and all the rest of it. And I get that 100%. I understand why they do that, but it just became less and less and less and less and more restrictive. And it was like, actually, you can't have any creativity, and no, you can't do that, and it's got to be this way and that way. And it just, I didn't like it. So I had to do it my way and had to start figuring out what my way was. And it was just jump in, both feet, give it a go, see how I get on, and keep slogging away, because social media can be a really slow burn. Well, it was at that time anyway, but TikTok is kind of proven otherwise for a while. It was a real slow burn of trying to find my feet and try to find the people that really resonated with what I was talking about.
And where did you find them initially?
LinkedIn was incredible, and 90% of my clients still come from LinkedIn to date. The others come from referrals, and it was through having that consistent messaging. But the messaging initially was, I'm a financial advisor and I do things very differently. And my view was, I'll share as much information as I can for knowledge and all the rest of it. And actually, the other thing is, I was probably way ahead of the curve on a lot of people that started to do that, because LinkedIn was very corporate and stuffy at that point in time. It's very, very different now. And that's what a lot of people do. In the accountancy space, the accountants are absolutely killer on LinkedIn, or those guys that are, look, this is me, this is how I do it. And I'm not the pinstripe suit and the watch and all the rest of it. So it's kind of decorporatized it a little bit, if that's even a flipping word, but it's just become more it's become the personal brand. But the hard part for me is, like, when I first started doing it, I reached out for a coach, found a coach to do it, and I'm a big believer in coach. I think it's incredibly powerful. Find somebody who's already doing this, find somebody that can accelerate me from 0 to 150 miles an hour, rather than from me going 0 to 10 to 20 to 30. And she just said, I'm not going to teach you how to get leads, I'm going to teach you how to build a personal brand. And I was like, personal brand? Like, what the fuck's a personal brand? Like, I'm not interested in personal brand, because in my head I'm thinking, oh, I'm taking pictures of me beans on toast for breakfast and putting on Instagram, and like, oh, I've just been to the gym and I've just done this. But it wasn't that at all.
Yeah.
And I had to just get out of me mindset of everything that's been drilled into me and the stuff that I've just consumed. And I didn't do anything for weeks. I just sat there for a long time thinking, do I really want to do this and do I not? And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, and I think that's really striking, some of the things that you said there, you know, like that last piece there, you sat there for 3 weeks or so and gone, oh my God, do I really want to do this? Am I going to? And it's almost that fear of unknown. And, you know, you touched on personal branding as well. Just quickly, when you first started getting your leads on LinkedIn, from day one to when you say, maybe let's say you had like a steady source of people coming into your inbox or taking action, what was that time frame?
Oh man, months. It was months of consistently being on somebody's agenda by posting content that just resonated with people. And I'm a big believer in the whole phrase of, like, give away as much as you can for free and you'll find the right people. Because a lot of people will say, oh, I can go and do that myself now because I understand that stuff. Or they'll be like, Ian, I haven't got a clue about that. Can you help? And I think, and there's a big difference in the quality of the leads that come through. So I'll kind of, like, the first leads were probably within a couple of months. They were probably not the ideal client. They were probably just people reaching out for a little bit of information, a little bit of knowledge, or to help kind of along their path, not something I could bill for. But what that then made me realize is actually maybe the messaging slightly off, and I need to be messaging, or the brand needs to represent people that are my ideal clients. So who are they? And that was 3 to 4 months in, and then all of a sudden the wheels started turning, and it went absolutely crackers, to the point where, and I remember this as clear as day, there was one I said, I need to take some time off. I'm going to go play a game of golf with one of my mates. I put a post up on LinkedIn on the morning. We had an early tee off time. By the time I'd got to the first tee, I had 12 leads on my inbox, and that was within half an hour. And I'm like, this is crazy.
Wow.
But that's the power of this stuff if you get it right.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things you've got, if you're going direct to customer, you're not going through people, and with that personal brand, they're connecting. I guess you touched on ideal client there. How there's a couple of questions here. How did you figure out who your ideal client was? And what are the things in your messaging that you did to make sure those people read it and engage with it?
Of course. So for me, it was It was twofold. So initially, I thought my ideal client was like, who am I going to make the most money from?
Yeah.
Because that's probably where, as a business owner, if you're commercially driven, that's where you probably go to. Like, who was going to make me the most money? And then secondly, it was like, out of all the clients that I've kind of looked after over the years, who were my favorite type of clients to deal with? As in, easy to get on with, get stuff done. You're not chasing them for stuff. And I landed on business owners because it was probably the SME kind of size of business owners as well, because the time for them is at a premium. They've probably got experience of using an accountant, using solicitors, and just want to get stuff done and get it done properly and quickly. So that's how I kind of landed on that. And then eventually, I guess the quality of those improved, the size of the business has improved over a period of time, and eventually kind of they're my kind of people. And I'll say that as a bit of a buzz phrase, isn't it? Like, you want to deal with your kind of people. But I'd love, like, all the clients that I deal with, I could quite happily go for a beer with, or go for a game, watch a game of footy with them. So why can't I have those kind of clients? Because in the corporate world, you're like, oh, you need to be like ultra professional, and you've got to put that. I mean, you've been in it, you've worked in it before.
Yeah.
You know what that's like. Do you know what I mean? But the messaging, I don't think it did change massively, to be honest with you, because it was still all about help and support. But over time, I then started kind of analyzing that a little bit more and think, well, if I want to attract business owners, like, what's the simple stuff I need to get across? Because I think financial advice and accounting can feel really complicated to people, but it doesn't need to be. So the core of my message was keep it really simple and relatable and valuable at every single post.
And I think what you've done there is, like, if the information you're putting out is simple and easy to digest, people that are time sensitive are going to much prefer that than reading these long articles. And you kind of said, like, your ideal clients are people you could have a beer with. So if you're talking to somebody as like you were at the pub, people are going to connect with that message.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not what we're expected to do. But like, it's a full circle, because my dad was an IFA back in Newcastle, right? And I can remember he did it pre-regulation. So he was always on the golf course, he was always in the pub, or he was always going for something to eat with his clients. And that's how business was done. And I kind of came in when regulation was like in full force and all the rest of it, and it was all very stuffy and in an office and corporate. And I'm like, he had a great old life doing that stuff, but it feels like that's almost kind of pushed to one side and rubbished. But then for me, that's come full circle, because now I'm like, most of my appointments are virtual, but I know if I said to a client, look, I'm in your neck of the woods, do you fancy going for a beer and we'll have a bit of a catch up? 99% of my clients will be like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And that's the kind of relationship I want with those people.
And that's the key, isn't it? It's you want to deal with those sort of people. So your messaging is around that, how you speak to those people. And after a while, I'm guessing, it's the theory of compounding, isn't it? 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4. Same with your following count, same with people that are going to eventually. And I remember reading about 5-6 years ago that it takes about 18 months on average for someone to buy your services. You're like, what you've said is you found who your ideal client is, you've put content out that relates to them in a way that they want to digest it. And then after a couple of months, you've started to see 1 become 2, 2 become, to the point where you've had 12 after 1 kind of post. But I think maybe a lot of people see the 12. They don't see the months of slogging away where you put 1 post out and no one engages with it. Yeah. Because the right people just haven't seen it yet.
But I think you need to have a bit of you see the social media stuff as a bit of a slow burn. Like, that's going to take time, but you need clients coming through the door to pay the bills in that process, because otherwise all that's going to happen is you'll do it for 2-3 months. And I've seen this hundreds, if not thousands of times, a couple of months of, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And you get 2 months in, you're like, well, where's the ROI on that? Because I've spent all this time trying to build this brand, and you just stop. And then you probably see it a lot as well on social media. Then like 3 months later, they'll try and start again. A couple of months, stop. But that's the worst thing you could do, because at that point in time, you've built that trust, you've built that reputation. You're almost at the point where you might get that next lead from that very next post, and you just don't know. And for me, it was that fear of, if I stop, I'm never going to know. So I just kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of building your audience up to the point where you then turn around and you say, look, I'm doing this. Do you want it? And people go, yeah, I do actually, yeah. Or at some point it just connects. And I always refer to it as the right time effect.
Right.
So I email my clients Monday and Friday every week. Now I try and post 3-4 times across different social medias, and I get people come to me and they respond to my emails and they say, Tom, this is the perfect time. I'm like, it's not necessarily the perfect time for me. What I've done is I've continued to do the same thing.
Yeah.
You're just at a point now where you're ready to take action. And that's kind of what you've done, right? From your consistent messaging.
Mm. And then the next layer on top of that is the stuff that you're doing. It's like to build a community, to build the email list, and then kind of take that. But up until this point, I've had so much stuff from social media. I'm kind of like, do I really need to do this? But now, like I said, when I'm trying to look at the bigger picture and how far I can kind of spread, that's the next layer of stuff for me. It has to come on top of that. And then it's been creative in the DMs, because up until this point I've kind of rubbished the DM kind of game and thought, not for me. But actually, that's really powerful if you get it right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Max, I spoke to Max Whiteley. I don't know if you know him. He had a really great approach. What he was doing is taking Loom, being on somebody's profile and go, hey, I'm on your profile. I've connected with you because I work with people like you that have these problems. Maybe it's worth a chat. If not, glad to be connected anyway. And he was saying that 2 in 10 would book a meeting. 2 in 10 would book a meeting, and it'd take him an hour to send 10 of those. So an hour a day, 2 leads from every 10. It's just mad, I guess. And just going back as well, one of the things I think you've done really, really, and you mentioned it there, is you've really cemented your ideal client. I always talk about finding your VIP. So most people, they probably say 80% of the revenue probably comes from 20%. You know, the Italian Pareto principle.
Yeah.
But it's true. But in that 20%, you've got some that just make you money, but they're, and then you've got some that 1 to 2 or 3 that you absolutely love. You love speaking to them. You love being around them. You just love everything about that client.
Yeah.
And if you can hyper focus on where that person is, how they talk, the content that they want, and you focus consistently and show up every day for months, you'll get more of those people. And that's what I say to them. And I think you're kind of living proof that that's what happens.
Oh man, like 100%. Like it blows my mind, some of the clients that I work with now, because, and I'll use an example of a guy I've just taken on recently, and he's got a great job. He works as a consultant. He's at the latter stages of his career. He's got like 12 years before he wants to pack in. He's making a phenomenal amount of money doing what he does. And every meeting I have with him, he's like, Ian, that's great. That's amazing. I love that. And he's like, you're the expert. Tell me what I need to do and I'm going to do it. The feedback I get of him is incredible. Like every time I get a message from him, he's like, I'm so glad I'm working with you. I've done this, you've done that. And I'm like, they're the kind of guys that you want to deal with, you know, because it makes you feel great about what you're doing. And it's total trust. And that's the thing, like, especially when you deal with people's money, that trust has got to be there. Because if it's not, you just kind of lick your finger, stick it in the air, and pick any financial advisor that you come across. You know, like you've got to build that trust part of it up. But what I'm getting better at is saying no to the clients that aren't the ideal ones, and that's hard when you first get going. Because if you've got no revenue coming in, and you've got bills to pay, and you've got somebody who's kind of waving a £1 notes in front of you because you want to be a client, you'll take them on, and everybody does it. Everybody I know in business who's done it says exactly the same thing. You take on everybody and anybody from the start. But then 2-3 years into the line, you're like, should I have really taken this guy on? Should I have really done that? But I'm getting better at kind of spotting those and kind of trying to weed them out with the process. I'm only dealing with the type of clients that I want to deal with from now on. And it's great, but there's always peaks and troughs in business. And at the times when you're in a bit of a trough, you can guarantee that's when one of those clients, kind of potential clients, knocks on the door, and it's hard to turn that down sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it is, right? Because you're like, oh, I've got bills I need to pay, stuff that needs attention, and then somebody comes along and says, I can help you here. I'll take my money, and you're like, oh, like I could take that, and it's going to solve these problems over here.
Yeah.
But you know, take that money, it solves these problems, but then it creates these problems, and it's not worth it. But if you're consistently showing up every day, you know, eventually 2-3 weeks down the line, somebody else that is your ideal client is going to come in.
Absolutely.
So aside from LinkedIn, what other things are you doing?
Started TikTok, started Instagram. They are like a whole different ballgame, whole different beast. I stopped asking for referrals from clients, and my referral levels went through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really deliberate thing to do, because I thought to myself, it's really cheesy and uncomfortable asking for referrals. And a lot of people do it, and they do it really well. And they'll kind of turn up at client meetings and say, right, when I come back and see you, John, I want another 2 people that you deal with that are in your position. That's not me. It's not my bag. I just thought I'll make myself as valuable as I possibly can to that client, so I become referable. And it really, really worked. And now I'm in a position where I track this stuff regularly. Every client that I've looked after for longer than 12 months has made at least one referral. That's insane, because I would never get those figures when I kind of was in the big corporates. It just didn't work. The next step for me is like I said at the start, it's that layering piece. It's then the extra marketing. It's the sales funnel building, it's the lead magnet stuff, it's the landing pages, it's that next level to really nurture people through that process. And segmenting the audience and the offers that I've got, like we said at the for kind of off air, was LinkedIn's a very different audience to TikTok and Instagram. And initially, when I started dabbling with Instagram and TikTok, it was, well, I can just do that on there. You can, but you can't, because the messaging has to be slightly different. I have to have a slightly different offer, and I'm currently working through that with somebody at the minute. And I think for me, it's about find somebody who's already doing this, find somebody who's already doing this well, and work with them, because you will be so much further ahead than trying to figure it out yourself. And that's a really tough thing to do when you maybe haven't got the revenue coming in. And like, for me, the business isn't where I want it to be financially yet, but that's solely because so much of the money that I'm kind of bringing in is getting spent on infrastructure and having the right people around me to be able to build this stuff and take it to that other level. So there's lots of stuff coming down the line.
Yeah, and I think that's mega. I think, like you said there, you're constantly reinvesting in the business, but a lot of people will say reinvest in the business, but part of your reinvestment is coaches and people that are doing the things that you want to do to bring the business in that you want. Yeah. And you're totally right. It's very easy. So I try this all the time. I'm constantly trialing. I'll post something on Instagram, and I'll do a funny meme. It will be a little bit more of a fun tone with a slightly different call to action. If I post that on LinkedIn, the engagement on there is appalling. It just doesn't work. But it's understanding that, I think, but also having, and correct me if you disagree, but you're going to have to check your ego. If you're doing really well in one space and you go to another, you're like, oh, whatever, it's not my audience. And it's like, well, it probably is your audience, just the message is wrong on that platform.
100%. Like, and the reason I know that for sure is I did exactly the same thing to get into TikTok and Instagram as I did with LinkedIn. I thought, right, I'm going to find somebody who's doing this and working in this space already, who's doing well with case studies and examples. I'll find them, reach out to them, try and work with them. Worked with them, and they were like, maybe TikTok's not for you. Maybe TikTok, it doesn't just work in the financial services space. And I'm like, look, I know this stuff works. I know how powerful it is because I've done it already. I've got the case studies and the models, and I can get business from TikTok. I just need to figure out a way. We eventually stopped working together. It was amicable. They just said, look, we can't do what you think you're going to do. Find someone else. And I found somebody else who's like, and they hit it bang on the head. And they said, your content is great. It's how you're delivering it that needs to change. And that was a real eye opener for me, because the LinkedIn content isn't going to work cookie cutter approach onto TikTok and Instagram. It needs to be tweaked and changed and delivered slightly differently. And like you said, just check that ego at the door. Because it's worked over there, it's not necessarily going to work over here. And that was hard, man, because I had to unlearn and forget about everything that I've used on LinkedIn or compartmentalize it when I'm working on TikTok and Instagram and start from scratch. And it was like, just try and figure stuff out. And I think the one thing tip I give to anybody is with TikTok and Instagram, especially TikTok, it's volume. Like, get as much content out as you can as quickly as possible. And when you land on something that works, double down on it. And then start tweaking and changing that, and then double down on the next bit and double down on the next bit. Like, I was posting like 4 or 5 times a day on TikTok just to get that feedback and that data. And that's the one thing I love about that platform. Like, the analytics and stuff you get on it is insane. Like you've got retention time, all that stuff just sits there and you can start looking at it. It's there for a reason. Use it.
Every platform has, obviously, TikTok have a really great one, but every platform has those analytics. And that's one of the biggest things when it comes to your content is actually, I will regularly post types of content. I will do long form written content with a picture, long form written content by itself, long form written content with a funny video, with a serious video, and figure out that's the same, could be the same piece of content done 4 times, and I'll notice a massive difference. And it's that, isn't it? It's using those analytics. Like, okay, cool. Like I know if I'm doing a long form text, all I need is to remove any images and stuff, a couple of emojis, and that gets the best engagement. Or it might be with a video, whatever. It's that tweaking and using those analytics. So, you know, we touched a lot on social media.
Yeah.
And referrals. Is there anywhere else that you're investing time or seeing results?
Right now, no, but there's a lot of stuff on the agenda. I think there are concierge services out there that will go and find your clients. I think the commercials have to stack up on that. I think there are a lot of, certainly in the financial services space, and particularly in financial advice, there are a lot of lead gen companies that promise sun, the moon, and the stars. A lot of them are relatively expensive, and I used them a long time ago and don't necessarily deliver on what they're capable of doing. But I think for the right partner and somebody that can do it and deliver it properly, like that's almost instant bottom line stuff if you find the right person to do that. So that's definitely going to be something I'm going to explore a little bit further down the line. And it's just building that whole offer piece around. Like I really want to get to a point where I can run a private community of people that want to have not financial support, increase the knowledge around financial services. They maybe can't afford a financial advisor because financial advice fees are relatively expensive, but they need some degree of help. Like to me, that is a huge piece that I'm trying to evolve and figure out what that looks like. And that would then be almost its own ecosystem, which would then effectively feed through into the financial advice side of it further down the line. So that's a big one. I think that's relatively untapped in the space that I work in.
Yeah, I think that's mega, having actually a community built around finance, like understanding your finances, is because it's such a, for a lot of people it seems like such a taboo subject. But I think if you've got a community of people going, actually, yeah, we have these misunderstandings, or we've done this, or we want this, it gives you that safe space to talk about something that is really inherently quite personal.
Professional connections are a big one as well. Like I've got introducers that I work with who introduce business. Accountants are a great one. Mortgage brokers as well. And again, a lot of that's come off the back of LinkedIn, but then develop that conversation offline, because if they're referring you to a client who needs your services, that's a lot warmer than somebody who's just come through via LinkedIn or wherever who wants to have a little bit of a chat. Like that's incredibly powerful stuff. And the other part for me with that thing was I'm also protecting what I've got, because if I'm working with an accountant who really trusts me, then they're not relying on their clients finding their own financial advisor who might work with a different accountant. And that then comes back to me. Like if I trust that accountant, they trust me, then that's a whole kind of two people with their arms wrapped around that relationship, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it promotes a better client experience. And I think that's one of the more untapped or maybe incorrectly done things is partnerships with people. Is if you can, like you said, they develop a right partnership with the right accountant, you really focus on that, the results are incredible. It's where where people go wrong is where they just try and partner with everybody. And it's just like, what's going on here?
And I did that at the start. Like when I first started dabbling with LinkedIn, I had a chat with someone. They were like, spend your day messaging 10 accountants and 10 solicitors, and eventually some of them will come back. And I'm like, do you not think these guys get bombarded with that stuff every single day? Because they do. And I do all the time, getting bombarded. And you're like, it's just more noise. It's the scattergun mud at the wall approach. And that didn't work for me. But what's actually happened is some of those accountants have ended up kind of messaging me and like, do you do referral partnerships? And how we have clients, can you take this person? And you've got to develop that relationship, right? Like there's only so many introducers realistically. You can't have 50, 60, 70 introducers and manage them all properly, because they're almost clients in themselves. Like you need to put time into that relationship, put effort into it, and kind of nurture it, and like have those conversations. And maybe you do a little bit of work for nothing that's going to develop that a little bit further. That stuff's really powerful, but you can't do that on top of the day job as well as your client bank. It's like it's nurturing it and kind of building that relationship and developing it.
I think you said there, like the understanding, actually, you might want to do a couple of free things here and there, and anything that really promotes a relationship first. And you probably as well, I'm guessing you're quite selective with who those people are.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I won't just jump into an introducers arrangement with anybody. I want to have a hands-on relationship with the pair of them, to the point where I'll say, look, if you've got clients that need help, give them my details. I'll have a conversation with anybody, because there could be something really valuable out of that relationship, or it could add value to your business. And if you kind of boil it down to its simplest form, if I've had something value to your business, then if someone did that to me, I'd feel like I almost owe them a favor. So right, I need to go and find them. So that stuff works. It's really, really powerful. But I've had other big accountancy firms reach out and say, we really want to work with you, but like what you're all about, can we get an introducers arrangement set up? And you get caught as a rabbit in a headlight. You're like, amazing, I've got this firm that want to work together, but nothing ever comes of it. And then you try and kind of say, well, can we get an appointment in the diary? Oh, I'm too busy. Can we get an appointment in the diary? I haven't got time. And you're like, I'm not going to waste my time with you then. Like, great that you could get me referrals, but if you're not doing that, I'm going to try and find someone who really cares about their clients, because that's where I'm going to add value.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key there, right? Is adding value. We've covered a lot, and I think there's a lot of points that I think people can pull out from,
Awesome.
Building your personal brand, to actually understanding that not all platforms are equal, and also like being selective with not only who you work with as a client aspect, but who you work with as a like referrer and partnership basis. And then on top of all of that, it's about working with coaches that have kind of done it to help you go, as you said earlier, from 0 to 150 rather than 0 to 30, 40, 50. So what's the one piece of advice you would give somebody that is they've been running their business a couple of years, their referrals starting to slow down, that's mainly the primary source of their business, and they want to start growing and getting more leads? What's the one thing they should do?
I'm going to use the social media slant. It's going to be really simple. It's pick a platform and go for it. Don't half-heart it, and don't wait to be perfect, because you'll never be perfect. Just get started and stay consistent. And if you can give that platform, no matter what it is, 6 months, you'll see results. Like, it's almost guaranteed that you'd see results if you stay consistent with your messaging and your approach, and you learn and adapt over time. You'll start seeing results off the back of it. It's so powerful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is one of the biggest things I tell everybody is, don't worry about the outcome, which is a little bit weird, but don't worry about the outcome. Worry about the process.
And it's so true with that. Yeah, absolutely, man. You've just got to keep going. And there'll be days when you want to pull your hair out, you haven't got any creativity, and you can't write a post. They're the days that are going to forge you into getting better at what you do. Because even when you're not creative and you put a post out, someone might completely resonate with that and be like, oh, do you know how to get that? And you'll really surprise yourself. I've done that a couple of times, and I'm like, oh, I can't really be bothered. I'll just do it anyway. And then all of a sudden, a couple of messages by lunchtime, and you're like, that's quite interesting, because I wasn't really feeling it, but somebody else clearly was. And it's just you'll adapt over time. Like, you'll figure that stuff out.
You're absolutely right. Look, I obviously appreciate your time a lot. If somebody wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way they can do that?
LinkedIn. Like, I don't have a website, which is quite strange in this world, but like, look me up on LinkedIn. So Ian Dempsey, or the Money Man in the background. I'm on TikTok at this ID the Money Man. Instagram's ID the Money Man. Just follow the socials, and you'll get a feel of what I'm all about.
On this video, I will pop Ian's LinkedIn straight into the link, so you can go straight to that. That's a wrap. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. Cheers, Tom.